Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains episode 1052. 1052. This is for the 16th of March, 2026. And you know what this is. This is the pre show, the magical, marvelous part of this program where we traditionally do three things. We share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and from time to time, we say some very outrageous things. So good to be back. I really missed last week's show. I mean, I literally raced in here. This is Studio B where we work. Started the show and had to go right back into Studio A for tornado coverage. We had severe weather Monday night of last week during the show, so I couldn't participate, and I hated that. Last week was the Storm Prediction Center show. We had Bill Bunting, and I think Evan was on from SPC. But anyway, I hated to miss that. But tonight, I think we're okay. It's been a wild 24 hours here. We had a severe weather event last night and this morning. It was an all-nighter. We went on live with the Alabama Weather Network at about 8, and we finished about 8 this morning, 12 hours of nonstop weather with the pretty dynamic system that produced a couple of tornadoes and some wind damage. And then on top of that, as those storms moved out, the trough came in, and we had a good band of snow that came through here this morning, snow showers, and it didn't do anything to travel. It was really no impact. But at this latitude, anytime you have one snowflake, it stirs up a ruckus. And we had enough to get the ground white. The grass was white for a while in many spots. But the yesterday it was like 80, so the soil temperatures are warm, and the snow didn't last long on the grass. And of course, the roads were just wet. Now they're all dry. So again, that was nothing. But it's been a long, interesting 24 hours. You go from and anyway, listen, this is March being March. Okay, we go from 82 yesterday to freezing tomorrow morning and snow today, and of course tornadoes during the transition. And I honestly have been so busy, I have not had a chance to look up and see what's happened up in the mid-Atlantic coast region today. And hopefully some of our guests can tell us. I know that we had a moderate risk, a level 4 out of 5 moderate risk up in there. And I've seen some, and again, I've just been glancing at the socials today, but I've seen a little bit of traffic about maybe it turned out to be somewhat of a bust. I don't know. We will yeah, again, that's all I see. Major bust for tornadoes. I see some guys apologizing. It happens. Listen, predicting the future is hard. It's really hard. Um, but again, I've just been so busy, and literally, I've not slept much, which makes that's when the best shows occur. All right, let's see. Chris, can you hear us? Okay.
Can hear you just fine. How are you doing today?
It's an honor to have you on the show. You're a legend.
I'm
Um,
not sure about that, but I'm happy to be here. And yeah, first time. I appreciate the invitation.
no, this is good. It is nice to meet you. I'm James, and I'm just the button presser guy here. I'm the sound engineer. That's my main purpose in life for this show. John Gordon, I think, is going to be leading us tonight. Yeah, do you know John by any chance?
Met him a couple times, yeah.
Yeah, John was the MIC in Louisville before retiring, and he did fly hurricane hunter missions for a while during his career. So he's very interested in this topic. Brian, can you hear us okay?
Hey, James, I can hear you great. Thanks for having me on again.
No, you look good. You sound good. You've got this whole thing figured out. I think back. We used to use Google Hangouts years ago. It was a nightmare. I mean, we'd literally have the most brilliant PhDs in the world as a guest, and they couldn't figure out how to get on with Google Hangouts. I mean, it was just. I look back on that, and it's just very strange. So we've been using Zoom for a while, and a lot of people say, "Hey, man, you ought to go to Riverside or some of these other platforms," and I'm sure they're great, but this has worked well for us, and for what we do, we're just going to stick with this, I think. All right, I see the commissioner, the commissioner emeritus is in the room. Uh, y'all know Kim, don't you? She's the greatest.
Hey, Kim.
Hey guys, Chris, Brian, good to see you both.
Hey,
See
nice
you.
seeing
Good
you.
evening.
So I
Um,
I have to say, did you guys hear any of the promotional spots we had ahead of this show? Because there's been some discussion of how hilarious it is that we have people with your particular names doing the marine weather show.
yeah.
That's going to be
There is some
mentioned.
irony. Yes, yes, indeed.
Yeah. Of all
Um,
the, sorry, go ahead, James.
no, clearly it's been a topic of discussion here. So, and the one thing that has just happened is that we used to stream, and let me just, Brian and Chris, so you'll know, we are streaming on YouTube now. And for years, at the top of the hour here, at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central, we would go on a local network of television stations here in the Southeast. But that has gone away because Master Control shut down. They literally shut down Master Control and moved it to a hub. I want to say it's somewhere in Ohio. And accordingly, they don't know how to make this work at this hub. So, and that's because very few people actually watch that. It's on these dot twos and dot threes and dot sevens and dot nines. But so we don't have to strictly worry about the top of the hour anymore, which is very nice. I don't look that look on John's face. That's disturbing. John, are you okay?
I'm good. I'm good. Good to see you, Eagle.
It's a
It's good to see
it's
you.
a look
I'm
of
amazed that you are up
bewilderment.
right now. You're up after working. How many hours have you been up?
Well, I didn't sleep last night, but it's okay. If you love this, if you love your job, you've heard this. You'll never work a day in your life, and it's true. I can't wait to wake up and do what I do. Listen. I've become some freak of nature. I don't sleep on a day where I could maybe sleep, but I just don't. I don't need sleep. I took a 15-minute nap. We were on the air last night from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. We went 12 hours nonstop, and took a nap, and then went to a school and did a school program today. My normal routine, and had to do regular production shift, and came down here and let's go. Here we go. So, and what made it complicating, John, was the fact that it snowed here today. And James understands this. Anytime it snows at this latitude, you guys are a little higher latitude. We're on the Interstate 20 path down here, but when it snows here, people freak. And so, on top of the storms and the severe weather of last night, we had the snow panic setting in today. And we had no impact. There was absolutely no societal impact other than people freaking out. But having said that, let's get this show started. All right. Track one, track two. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to WeatherBrains. They're kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal, according to Bill Curtis. Wow. WeatherBrains episode 1052. 1052. This is for the 16th of March, 2026. Beware the Ides of March. Had some pretty active weather for much of the country for the past couple of days. Where we are here, we had some severe storms last night and early this morning. Had snow today. Had a freeze tonight. But March is just doing what March does. So James ate a lot. How did you did you deal with this system at all in Tulsa, or is it all east of you?
Nearly all of it was east of us. So far eastern
Yeah.
counties was where the convection got started. But we had a record low this morning of 20.
Woo!
So
Woo!
yeah.
Ouch. Yeah, we sat in the 30s here all day today, and we
Same.
had snow for about 2 hours, and it was just a beautiful kind of snow, just gorgeous. And the roads were just wet, travel was fine. It was good. So and I on my way, I stopped. I just pulled over and I just stopped and I walked outside to enjoy it. Sometimes in the weather business, you don't get to enjoy the weather. But I just thought I'd stop and walk around and just soak it in. Light snow falling, just gorgeous. It was a good day. But let's go farther west in Oklahoma to Dr. McLean. Kim, I'm trying to think. We've had so many severe weather episodes here in the last week. When was the night that we had the issues in Oklahoma City around you? Was that a week ago or
Tuesday?
last Wednesday?
Wednesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday, right?
You worked it, James. What was? I know they're all bleeding together already. This is a terrible sign for this year. Yeah, whatever. Wednesday, Tuesday. It's all we've had a lot of fun here. And what was so far for March? Isn't it that we've the case that we've already had a record number of tornadoes for March?
Yeah, record state tornado
Yes,
since
right.
50. Yeah, yes, right?
Yes, followed by a dust storm that was just fantastic here. It was lovely. And now the freeze. Our biggest weather impact here in Norman, though, came
wind.
yesterday with high winds. And there was a power line that got knocked down across I-35 and shut down the whole highway for 18 hours. That's how long it took them to get that mess cleaned up. And it was this cacophony of like the lines went down, then there were a bunch of accidents, and power was knocked out to half of the city, and like one small thing dominoed into just beyond anything that we would put in an impact-based forecast typically for high wind in Oklahoma. Typically you think they'll be resilient to this, but it was like a house of cards. Just all came tumbling down yesterday.
I-35 was closed for how many hours?
18 hours. They had to route people around through like little side streets. I just avoided that entire half of the city for the rest of the day.
Oh, goodness gracious. That's tough. Well, let's go down 35 down to Austin to Troy. Troy, you had no issues like that there, right?
Nah, not anything. I mean, the only thing that's amazing around here is we were 97 or 98 yesterday, and I think we were 50 degrees below that today, right?
Woo!
Yeah, or 40 to 50. And right now we're 47. We were about 95 this time yesterday, or a little before this. So anyway, it is what it is, and no weather here. I mean, the weather was mainly off to the east. Saw a little sprinkle last night in Austin, which we didn't expect. It came after the front came through, and nothing else, just a little blowing dust. Thank you, West Texas, for that contribution. And that's about it.
Yeah, we again the station I do in McAllen, they hit 101 yesterday.
Oh,
and today it was in the 70s. So yeah, it's been an interesting week of weather. But I'm excited about this show, John Gordon. I'm excited. This is going to be good. So let me bring in the great one, Air Jordan or Air Gordon. John, bring in our guests before they hang up on us, please.
I love the Air Jordan. Thank you, Eagle. Good to see you. You rocked. People in Alabama are lucky to have you, James. They really are. So, James Adeldot, thanks for Air Jordan. So tonight, folks, do you understand marine weather? Do you? When you're at the beach? How many go to the beach? Raise your hand. Who goes to the beach? Kim, do you go to the beach? We all go to the beach. And do we really even know all these plethora of products that are issued? Brian and Chris, do we really know? But tonight you're going to learn. So I'm privileged to announce and introduce Chris Lancy. Were you the first Sue at NHC, Chris? Were you the first?
No, I wasn't the first, but I was probably the longest lasted one, about 11 years at Sue.
11 years, okay. And now he is the current the chief of the TAFB, Tropical Analysis Forecast Branch. Since when? When did you get that?
Got that 7 years ago. And so we've really enjoyed working with our 16 marine forecasters.
Yeah, and I like Chris. He reached out to me a long time ago about how to hire better. So I hope that's helped. James Spann hires really well. Look at this team up here. So, all right. And Brian Lamar, my friend. So good to see you, Brian. Brian's in 33 years. He used to be the program manager for the Marine Coastal Program. Didn't you, Brian?
Yeah, it's been a long time. That's over 20 years ago. That was back in 2002 for a couple of years. Yeah, it was definitely an exciting program.
He was the warning coordination meteorologist out in Lubbock. And then he was the MIC, I think 17 years in Tampa.
It was.
Yeah. And he's been involved in so many big events in Florida, the Weather Service, and then he became what was the official title? The Modernization Transition Manager person.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. The operations model program manager. Yeah, it's definitely going through a lot of changes right now.
Welcome, guys. Good to have you on Weather Brains. So I guess I'll start with you, Brian. What got you into weather? What was the key moment? I know you've told me some things. You went to Connecticut, right? You went to
It is, yeah. So way back when, I'll probably date myself here, but I think a lot of us can do the same with, our weather events when we were kids. And it was back to the blizzard of February 1978. And so that was when I was a little kid up in Connecticut and growing up there. And I remember, my parents taking my brother and I on these, we call it a toboggan, but it's a sled basically for people that don't grow up in snowland, and bringing us around the state of Connecticut. It was shut down and without power, and we had to go pick up the famous eggs and milk and bread, and yeah, it was a big event. And then shortly after that, Hurricane Gloria, 1985. So that was another pivotal one. I was, I think, 12 years old, about to turn 13 at the time, and Hurricane Gloria forced us to go into our basement. Here I am in Tampa, Florida, where we get a lot more hurricanes. We don't have basements here, but up in Connecticut, we had a basement, and I was just really intrigued by the snow, the thunder that occurred with that snowstorm, and then Hurricane Gloria, and really wanted to learn the why, which I think a lot of us went through, and yeah, joined the Weather Service after that.
Okay, so how far from your house was landfall in Gloria? I don't remember Gloria, but
Yeah, Hurricane Gloria, it was weakening as it was moving northward, but it was still pretty potent as it made landfall along Long Island, across Long Island Sound, and then we were maybe about 30 miles inland over central Connecticut. And so we kind of had the northern eye wall dissipating. So a lot of wind gusts, a lot of power outages, a lot of trees down in that part of the state.
what cat was it when it landed? Was it Cat 2?
Yeah, it wasn't a major at that time. It was weakening below a major as it moved in, but it was just below Cat 3 as it got to Connecticut.
All right. Then you went to college there in Connecticut at West.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of people don't know the rest of that sentence that you're about to say.
I'm afraid to say it because I'll be corrected. Go ahead.
Oh, it's great. I actually spent one semester in Vermont, so the famous Linden State College, where many meteorologists went there, the famous Jim Cantori School. Spent one semester there, fall of 1990, but transferred down to Western Connecticut State University. They had just started their meteorology program.
That's it. I almost said it, but I was afraid. I was nervous in the final showdown. Okay. Chris, what was your big story? What got you into the weather field? How did your journey go?
My folks are from Illinois. My dad from Chicago and my mom from a farming town just east of St. Louis. And they got a job in 65. My dad did, as teaching at University of Miami. Moved there when I was a baby. A week later, Hurricane Betsy hit. And they were about ready to go back to the Corn Belt. And fortunately, they stuck around. And I don't know if that was my preordained fate, but by the time I was in high school, I was charting the hurricanes with my portable NOAA weather radio. And in high school, I got a chance to work at the Hurricane Research Division for class credit. And we worked with Jack Parrish and Frank Marks. And then a couple of times we'd go across the street and go windsurfing because we're on a barrier island. I'm like, work for a little bit and then windsurf the rest of the day. I'm going to be a meteorologist. And so I stuck with it. And, many years later, here I am at the Hurricane Center.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit. So where'd you go to college and how did you get a summer job at NHC, which I can't imagine was easy?
Yeah. So I had a chance to go to UCLA to do two things. One was meteorology, which doesn't have a lot of universities back in 1983. And the other was I wanted to play varsity water polo. And that's also a fairly small sphere. So the two small circles only intersected at two schools in the United States. One was the Air Force Academy, and the other was UCLA. And I'm not military. Thank goodness for the military, but it wasn't for me. And I applied, got into UCLA, and I did both meteorology and water polo there.
Okay. I honestly didn't know UCLA had a Met program. Do they still have one today?
They do. The grad program is fairly large, but the undergrad's not too big. So, but it was a good opportunity. From there, I went to Colorado State University and worked with Bill Gray on the seasonal hurricane forecasts. and I got to do some climate variability and change on hurricanes. And he introduced me to all the forecasters at the National Hurricane Center, and I was able to come down and work with them for a couple summers. And
All right,
so,
I got to do this because James Span's going to do this. So tell me a story about Bill Gray for the WeatherBrains audience. Tell them who he is and tell us a story.
okay. So Bill Gray is a 6'5" former minor league baseball pitcher that was in the Air Force as a forecaster, went back to school and got his PhD at University of Chicago. And he was one of the founding members of the Colorado State University faculty when they started meteorology back in the 60s. He's an eccentric gentleman, brilliant, but pretty eccentric. So one of my favorite stories where we were heading to Mexico for a conference, and he took me along as a grad student. Wonderful. And we get off the plane and have to walk on the tarmac. And as soon as he gets down the steps, he starts walking in circles. And I'm like, Dr. Gray, are you okay? And he's like, Chris, can't you just feel the Coriolis so much less down here? Oh my gosh. True story. So yeah, that's the way he was. But he was a wonderful mentor, learned so much about hurricanes and tropical meteorology, and also the people he introduced me to. So
show title, James.
Yeah. Hey, and John, a little promo here. We had Bill on the show on episode 46. He was on WeatherBrains 46 in December of 2006. So we'll put that in the show notes. This was not a video show back then. It was audio only, but it was a great show. So we'll put a link to WeatherBrains 46 with Dr. Gray. That was fun. It was a good one.
Yeah, we'll get Chris, one more thing real quick. Can you tell us the formula, anything about the infamous formula about the season? Do you want to say anything from Gray that will wow us?
For many years, it was just he pulled it out of his you-know-what, pretty much. It was made up.
Show title. Really that's our show title.
It's a little more quantitative now, but for the first 10 years that we were doing those seasonal forecasts, it was pretty much whatever we thought it was. So it was an interesting time working with him at the advent of the seasonal hurricane predictions.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I went off topic. I just love Bill Gray. Bill Gray was a pioneer and trailblazer. So I got to watch episode 46. That's my homework. So, okay, so the Marine program. I don't know. Brian, describe in general what the Marine program is for the Weather Service.
I can. And do you want me to show some graphics?
Yeah, bring it on.
And I think you need to allow it.
James, can you allow that?
I am going to make that happen right now. They have really changed the outlay here. So hang on, stand by.
No problem.
Stand by.
It's those people
in the master control hub.
Now you're good.
The hub.
You're good. You're good. Yes, stinking master control hub. They hub it out.
All right, good deal. And yeah, what I'll do here is just kind of show a couple slides. And again, just to reiterate, used to be meteorologist in charge here at the Tampa National Weather Service for many years, and now kind of started my own consulting company called Inspire Weather, and really focusing a lot on coastal marine weather services here in Tampa Bay and across actually the world. I was over in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia last June and July, helping them modernize their services. And one component of it was marine weather. But to answer your question, John, I think everyone listening and on the call knows all of the field offices of the National Weather Service. We have 122 weather forecast offices across the country. That's the continental United States. We have Alaska, Hawaii, South Pacific, Guam, American Samoa. But out of that 122 weather forecast offices, there are 46 coastal marine weather forecast offices. And these are the offices that are, again, looking at both land and sea. I like Chris Lanzey's last name, so we'll put to that. And I think, Kim, you're going to throw in my last name at some point there with Lamar, meaning the sea in French and in Spanish. But in any case, looking at these offices, and I'll zoom out a little bit and I'll stop sharing because I want to actually show some imagery here. And today is a perfect day to show this because I was actually going to be showing a whole bunch of boring slides, but I wanted to actually use real-time data since everyone knows what's going on. So you already heard when James was talking, he hasn't slept at all, and you're looking at the weather information here. This is a current satellite image looping from earlier today. And you can see the cold front pushing across the eastern United States and across Florida and much of the eastern seaboard. This is what we do at weather forecast offices and meteorologists that are looking at marine weather is we have to track these storms because they do significant impacts for marine transportation, for fishing. Think about seafood industry, recreational, commercial fishing, but also safe navigation across the country. And looking at radar, again, another tool that we all use as meteorologists when we're looking at marine and coastal weather services. So again, satellite imagery, radar imagery. Again, this is a live loop. You can see the squall line as it moved where I am today in Tampa, Florida. Over the marine area, we look at buoys from the National Data Buoy Center, which is out of Stennis, the Space Center out of Mississippi. And that buoy data let us know that off the west coast of Florida today, we were seeing wind gusts about 40 to 45 miles per hour. And those were actually intensifying as those storms moved inland. And looking at, again, the entire country, John, I'll zoom in. I'll pick Tampa because we're here. I'll show some other examples. But if I were to click on the west coast of Florida here and show the Tampa weather forecast offices, what you see are these, what we call zones, and these are marine zones. And I'm just going to focus on the coastal area because Chris is going to talk about, the offshore, the high seas, and the tropical component that his branch is responsible for. But when you talk about local weather forecast offices, there are different products that we issue. Now, a lot of folks listening were probably under severe thunderstorm watches and warnings, tornado watches and warnings. You heard James talk about snow, so there were snow advisories with this system. But in the marine world, there's different levels of advisories, and the very minimal one is called a small craft advisory. And you can see the headline right here. This is live. So this is a small craft advisory that's in effect for the west coast of Florida through tomorrow evening. And this is due to the strong winds that are blowing behind that cold front that I showed you earlier with the satellite and the radar. But by definition, a small craft advisory is going to be issued when the winds are greater than 20 knots typically, and when seas are higher, 7 feet or higher. So that's kind of the criteria for the coastal portion of these advisories. And I want to show a really interesting visual. A lot of people are familiar with aviation, right? This is looking at the world of air traffic. Okay, let's zoom in. Let's go into Birmingham, Alabama. So we'll go in there and we can see air traffic moving around the area and looking off the west coast of Florida where the radar is. The reason why I bring it up, there's another portal and you can look at it right now. Anyone listening can go to marinetraffic.com. So marinetraffic.com, this is looking at all of the vessels across the world. Now I'm going to zoom in the United States. Okay, here's the Gulf of Mexico. So you can see natural routes along the Gulf of Mexico, just like we saw with flight travel, where you see the natural airways of aircraft. And yeah, this is what we'll look at, again, as meteorologists, whether you're in the National Weather Service or not. And this right here, look, I'm looking at Norwegian Star. This is what was leaving Tampa Bay. This is very important for us to know as meteorologists when we're forecasting seas and also wind speeds, because we work with the Coast Guard, and Chris will get into that. We do that at local forecast offices when I was in charge of the Tampa Weather Service. And we would help them with weather data so they can make accurate decisions. And looking at a really awesome portal, again, if no one has seen this before, just go on Google, type in National Weather Service hazards, and you can zoom in anywhere. All these colors are where certain hazards are right now. And I'm going to zoom into off Tallahassee because look at these colors, different colors. So the one on the right here, I'm going to click on it and you'll see small craft advisory. So we saw that already. And we can click on a different advisory, and this is a gale warning. So something we don't see every day. So you may ask yourself, what's the difference? We got small craft advisories. I said that's like 20 knots and seas about 7 feet. But a gale warning is even more severe. So that is almost like a tropical storm warning. okay? But when you don't have a tropical storm. So a gale warning is about 40 miles an hour, it's about 34 knots, same thing as a tropical storm. And that's going to be issued whenever the meteorologists at the National Weather Service feel that the winds are going to be in that criteria or greater. And this really tells boaters that, hey, if I'm in a small vessel, I should not be out there on the water. It is life-threatening, it is dangerous. And that's why when I showed the marine traffic, let me go back one. I'll go back over here and let's see here. And we could see, where was that one? Right over here. And so you can see there's not a lot of traffic going on off the Florida Big Bend. There usually is, but because of the gale warning and the National Weather Service puts that information ahead of time, it allows people to make life-saving decisions, Sean.
Okay, can I ask this really quick? And you keep that. So is the lowest threshold the small craft advisory? Let's start at the very bottom. I'm at the beach. What's the first thing that you will do to alert me of stronger waves and wind?
There are different levels, right? And so we have something called a small craft should exercise caution. That's like 15 to 20 knots. But if you're going to the beach and you don't plan to go in the water, we're going to issue, say, a beach hazard statement. We're going to let people know that, and this is, I know, one of your area of interest, John, one of your pet peeves of, you got a lot of people out there on the beaches, and what do they have when they're trying to protect themselves from the sun? They've got
umbrellas.
Yeah. They've got those large beach umbrellas, and it does not take much wind to turn those umbrellas into missiles. And unfortunately, those have actually injured or killed people in high winds where those umbrellas get ripped out of the sand. It becomes basically a kite, and that goes out and could actually do a lot of damage. So the National Weather Service will alert people when we're looking at strong winds along the beach.
Okay, so let's say I'm going in the water. So let's go from the lowest up above. So what's the first thing that's, and is it one? Can I find these easy on the websites?
It is. And so all you have to do is go to weather.gov and you click on where you're going to the beach. Doesn't matter where. Any stretch of the coastline in the United States, you're going to have a weather office that is going to provide that information to you. And where you're going with that is because there's also other hazards, and there's some out there right now called rip currents. And so rip currents are basically, I don't want to say invisible because you can spot them, and I'll show them. I'll share the screen again coming up. But rip currents are a hazard for beachgoers because a lot of people that go to the beach are from out of town, right? And so they come here, I'll say Florida, they're coming down from Michigan, they're coming down from Connecticut where I grew up. Wherever they're coming from, they're not used to Florida beaches or beaches in general. And so they venture out into the water, and it may look like a great day. It could be 90 degrees out. They go in the water. There could be a hidden hazard called a rip current. And again, I'm gonna show you an image right now of what one looks like. So let me share that screen again. And let's see here. So here we go. Let me do the slideshow. So this right here is an image of the North Carolina beach line. And this is a famous image of a rip current. And you're looking at it, and the average viewer may not be able to tell. When you're on the beach and you're looking out to the water, you may see this all the time. But I overlaid the arrow because, let me take it away. So there is the break in the surf. Okay, you have the incoming waves. It starts breaking into the surf zone, and it allows a channel of water to pile up on the land side of the beach, and then eventually it breaks through the dunes, the sand underneath the water, and there's a fast-moving channel of water that then goes outward. And a lot of people have been killed. Many people are killed every single year from rip currents because they are unaware of the danger, for one. And usually the National Weather Service will issue a rip current advisory in their beach hazard statement. But again, not many people have a NOAA weather radio hooked to their bathing suit when they go to the beach. So I can't stress enough, check your local National Weather Service, listen to the meteorologists on television, go to the websites and learn about the hazards in your area. Because even if you get swept out in this rip current, which is again, a fast moving channel of water, you can survive. Like I said, many people are killed. More people are killed from rip currents than many other weather hazards in the state of Florida and along many Gulf beaches. But as you're getting pulled out, you can swim parallel to the shore. Again, it can be difficult. A lot of people panic, but again, allow yourself to float a little bit and just remember, swim parallel to the beach, and you'll eventually get out of that stream of water that is pulling you outward, John.
Okay. So let me ask something about the rip currents. So that, we have turn around, don't drown, thunder roars. How did the Rip Current slogan and initiative even happen? I really don't know.
Yep. Yeah, I was actually in that national program manager job at the National Weather Service headquarters up in DC back in 2002 to 2004. And that's when the Rip Current slogan was created from folks that I was working with, also Delaware Sea Grant. So again, Sea Grant is part of NOAA and also with universities and states, and they help people understand the hazards of the ocean and the beach hazards. So there's a famous saying called break the grip of the rip. So break the grip of the rip is the hazard that the slogan is attached to. And I'll show you again, I'm going to show you another popular image here that could hopefully, save the lives of someone listening. This is an aerial view. So this is, Coast Guard beachgoers that are, again, looking at a rip current from above. And you can see what's called the head of the rip current. So again, on the right-hand side is where the beach is. You can see the breaking waves. You can see the rip current where I have the red arrow, and it usually goes out and it forms like a head in that rip current. And you want to swim to the left or right of that area, and then you can get back, to shore. But this is the pattern. So again, the rip currents break the grip of the rip, and you can see the image of the graphic here where the swimmer is going out, but again, your escape route is going left or right in that area, John.
So once again, let's go back if you're going into the water. So the products from lowest to highest again, let's just keep going through them.
Yep, perfect. And so if you're going to the beach, then you're going to be wanting to look at the forecast. We have things called the beach hazard statement, and that's going to tell you what the weather is. What's the UV, the ultraviolet going to be? What's the wind speed and direction going to be? Also, some offices are going to issue something called a harmful algal bloom statement. So imagine going to the beach. We get a lot here in Florida and other parts of the country. Think of like Lake Erie, think of other Gulf beaches, even up in the Gulf of Maine. Harmful algal bloom is simply an algae that forms in the water, and it can give you respiratory distress. The Tampa National Weather Service was the first office to collaborate with the National Ocean Service back between 2012 and 2015. And we worked with them to help amplify the message of that respiratory hazard, because people were going to the beach and they couldn't breathe and they were wondering why. And usually when you get that algae in the water and you have an onshore wind, it releases the toxins from that algae and you're going to start breathing in. And folks that have respiratory distress, asthma, you're going to feel it. I personally went to the beach just to test it, and it was not a good experience. I was on the boardwalk leading to the sand, and I was choked up and had to turn around. So again, those are some of the entry-level hazards. And then when we start getting into wind speed and waves, we're looking at small craft exercise caution. That's going to be for 15 to 20 knots. We're looking at a small craft advisory. That's 20 knots with seas 7 feet or greater. And you're going to see flags on the beaches. You're going to see pennants, flags that are going to be flying when we have a small craft advisory. You saw the gale warning that I showed earlier on the Florida Big Bend area. Again, that's about 34 knots or tropical storm force. And then there's something actually called a storm warning. And that's getting up to 60 knots, where you're starting to look at almost like hurricane force winds that Chris is going to get into. But again, the local office will be issuing this when we start seeing some of those higher wind speeds. And John, I could show a visual if you want to. I can show you a case study briefly.
Yeah, that'd be great.
This is pretty powerful. Ironically, we just had the anniversary here last week, but this is the superstorm. March 12th and 14th, 1993. I was up in Connecticut. I was actually volunteering at the National Weather Service that used to be at the Bradley International Airport in Hartford, and I was a junior at Western Connecticut State University. This satellite image, for a lot of us that lived through it and listening to this podcast, you may remember this. Even the northern part of it, you can see that famous, what's called the baroclinic leaf, that left to right leaf of cloudiness, the baroclinicity, the thermal advection, that strong squall line coming over Florida. Here's a zoomed in area. You can see the infrared satellite. This is from the 13th, as it almost looks a little bit like today, but the low pressure system is much farther north tonight over the Great Lakes and eastward. But this was a squall line that produced these headlines the next morning. And this was a marine event. Okay, so this is the title of the WeatherBrains tonight. We're talking about marine coastal weather offshore that Chris is going to get into. But these are the headlines here in Tampa the following morning. Many people lost their life in Florida due to storm surge. This right here is an image of the actual squall line. So that was the thunderstorm, the line of thunderstorms that was racing across the Gulf of Mexico at extreme speeds from where I used to work up in Corpus Christi National Weather Service all the way to where I am today, the timeline of that. But another marine hazard, John, that we didn't talk about is a coastal flood advisory and a coastal flood warning. This is something that's going to be issued when meteorologists, whether they be broadcast meteorologists, private meteorologists like myself now, or what I used to be in the National Weather Service, we're going to issue a coastal flood watch, a warning when we feel that coastal flooding is going to be impacting. Usually anything greater than 3 feet is when we're going to start issuing that coastal flood watch or warning. And Chris will delve into it on the tropical side, and that's usually aligns with storm surge, with tropical storms or hurricanes were 3 feet or greater. But look at these numbers of a non-trop. This was not a hurricane. This produced higher storm surge than many hurricanes in the area over the years. But we're talking about 6 to 9 feet across the Tampa Bay area, up to near 12 feet in the Florida Big Bend, very significant. And this is something that no mariner would ever want to see. If anyone has a home barometer, especially the older ones on the old barograph, I remember changing those. I think a lot of us on the call remember that. And it had a pen. It was like an old aneroid barometer, had ink on it, and almost like a tornado drop in pressure. This is what we see during extremely low pressure from tornadoes, hurricanes, or extratropical storm systems like this winter storm, that drop in it. And again, just showing again the massive span of that satellite picture. But yeah, coastal flooding, John, is another aspect that is significant hazard for anyone living along the coastline.
Okay, so for storm surge, who really has the ball on the storm surge? You want Chris to handle that, or you want to do? I mean, who? FO, TAFB, who has the final say on the storm surge?
It depends on what type of weather system is producing it. And so if we go back to the images I was just showing, that would be the local National Weather Service office that would be tracking that storm. It's not a tropical system, it's a winter storm system, or extratropical as we call it. Basically a non-tropical, low powerful, low pressure system. And the local National Weather Service field office, the 122 that we have, would be issuing that coastal flood watch or warning, issuing the tornado warnings, and issue the special marine warnings. And so there's that other tier for local marine products, Sean. So now we're getting into what produces what. So we talked about wind for the small craft exercise caution, the advisory, the gale warning, the storm warning. That's all based on wind and sometimes wave heights. But now we can talk about thunderstorms and water spouts, because the National Weather Service will issue what's called a special marine warning. Several were issued today. Several were issued today for thunderstorms. And let's take a look at one. Again, I love the fact that we can look at it live. So this was an hour ago. So this was issued by the National Weather Service in Tampa, 7:45 p.m. This Monday, March 16. This is the area of that special marine warning. So typically, local weather forecast offices will go from the beach line out to 20 miles, and then 20 miles out to 60 miles. And then Chris's team will pick up from the offshore and also the high seas, which go way out, 200 miles out in the open ocean. But for the local offices, this is what it looks like. It almost looks like a tornado warning box or a severe thunderstorm warning box. So the office outlined this area based on that squall line that was moving from northwest to southeast. And it was for water spout potential, which there was a water spout a little bit north in Bradenton earlier today, and also for the extreme gale force winds and 34 knots or greater. So this was what occurred today. And again, we're talking, there could be people from Alaska listening to us, right, John? And so this is looking at Alaska. This is today, okay? And this is one of their social medias that was going from Monday through Wednesday. And if you read the advertisement for the WeatherBrains tonight, there is something called freezing spray in there. So I wanted to show something, and here it is. So this is out of the Anchorage National Weather Service office. They cover a huge and enormous marine area. And they had a heavy freezing spray advisory in effect. And that has significant impacts, because as that heavy freezing spray, think of it like drizzle, but below freezing. Okay. And so you don't want to be out there. Think of a plane when there's freezing drizzle accumulating on the wings and you have to be de-iced. Well, you don't want extra weight to be on vessels, on the equipment for vessels, especially on the navigation equipment for vessels. So again, freezing spray is significant for this area. So again, yet another weather hazard that many people don't hear from unless they're on the coast.
Hey, Chris, hey, Brian, I'm so impressed about this, but let's talk about water spouts, all right? James Spann's on TV for 12 hours. There's a storm that's offshore, but it starts moving northeast and it's straddling the coast. What is the strategy for everyone concerned what to do with this?
So typically what will happen is the National Weather Service is using Doppler weather radar to analyze that storm over the water, just like they would over where Kim is over Norman, Oklahoma. They're watching that to see whether or not a tornado will form. Well, a water spout is a tornado on the water. If it's a true supercell tornado that's touching the water versus the ground, there are other water spouts that form in a different process, but again, it's still in the tornado family. So the National Weather Service Field Office will be drawing a threat area, a box around that area, going from the water towards the coastline, and they're going to issue that special marine warning. And then once it is forecast to come on the land, they're going to issue a tornado warning, because now that water spout will produce damage just like a tornado on the land.
Okay, but let's say there's one hitting all the docks on the water. What do?
You definitely want to heed the warning. So again, you want to have an all-weather radio. You want to have your cell phone that's going to be alerting you when you get your alerts. A lot of TV stations will have alertings that you want to make sure they have signed up on your iPhone or Android. And you want to make sure that you take safe shelter, because as this storm moves in from the coastline, I see way too many people out there like this, and they're taking pictures of it. And there's actual video on YouTube of people being injured as a water spout comes onto the beach and they're being sandblasted by the sand at 60, 70, 80 miles per hour, usually in the EF0 range. But who wants to be blasted with 80 mile an hour of sandblast? And also those umbrellas and the equipment and the chairs are on the beach and they're going to become flying at you at projectiles. So again, you want to take the same precaution as you would as a tornado warning.
Absolutely. Well, great point there. Absolutely. So, but I just trying to pin you down. Someone's got the longest boardwalk in, I don't know, Mobile, the Mobile boardwalk. It's hitting the outer edge of it. What is the product? Are you going tornado warning? Are you going what?
If the resolution is that great for that radar to determine that it's going to cross that dock, then yeah, same thing with bridges, John. So we issue a tornado warning here in Tampa Bay because we have bridges, the Skyway, Sunshine Skyway Bridge. A lot of coastal areas have bridges, of course. So if that storm is forecast to cross that bridge, then the product would be a tornado warning.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, you did a great job, but I didn't even know the answer. So, Chris, tell us about the tropical program. Tell us how we forecast waves. Show us your screen. What do you got?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Let me share my screen, and yeah, we can talk about. So I'm going to talk a little bit about tropical, but also talk about marine. And just to start off, I don't want to show a lot of words, but our mission statement is to provide wind and wave forecasts over the Caribbean, the Gulf, the Atlantic, and the East Pacific, 10 million square nautical miles. So who do you think some of our main customers are of these wind and wave forecasts? Just shout out an answer or two.
Go ahead, Troy, James, Kim.
Cargo ships.
Cargo ships.
Cruise lines.
Okay. The answer is, of course, it's the Mariners and the Mets. Well, maybe not those Mariners Mets.
Oh God, James Aeldot gave you that.
We've got a lot of baseball fans here at the Hurricane Center, but maybe not those Mariners and Mets, but these Mariners and Mets. And you're right, it's the cargo ships, it's the oil tankers, it's the cruise ships, it's the giant personal yachts. Do any of you have a giant personal yacht? If you do, I'll retire tomorrow and I'll be your personal meteorologist. I'm just saying. I'm ready. I'm ready. But another set of mariners are the U.S. Coast Guard, and so they're a big partner for us, where we're helping them out as they deal with weather hazards every day. Those are the mariners. The Mets are the Caribbean meteorologists, because each country in the Caribbean, Central America, Latin America, has their own weather service, and we're providing the big picture information, and they're tailoring it to everyone at their country. So what is one group that we don't want using our forecast, but they probably are? Well, come on, guys. It's the Pirates, obviously, keeping the
Oh,
baseball.
brother. Oh,
But
boy.
it is true.
Bump.
There actually are real world pirates out there, mainly in Indonesia, near the Gulf of Guinea and West Africa, that real life mariners have to deal with on a daily basis to stay safe. So we hope that they're not using our marine products and services there. So, so that's a little bit about who our customers are. So Brian mentioned the location. So kind of spatially showing who is providing the forecast depends where you are in the ocean. So as Brian mentioned, if you're within 60 miles of the US coast, then it's the local weather forecast office. If you're further offshore, then you're in the forecast waters we call the offshore zones. So in the dark green, we issue these offshore zones for each of these little shapes, as well as the Ocean Prediction Center. And the same thing in the Pacific. There's also Alaska issues some offshore zones as well. And then if you go further away and you're really out in the middle of the ocean, then it's what's called the high seas area. And that goes all the way to 35 west, up to 67 north, and all the way to the dateline as well. So big chunks of the ocean that we and the Honolulu Forecast Office and the Ocean Prediction Center do every day. So when we're doing these forecasts, it's not just for the United States, though. So we are weather service employed by the federal government. You know, when you all pay your federal taxes, thank you. You're paying my salary. But we're also doing it for the auspices of the International Maritime Organization. So the IMO divvies out every square inch or centimeter of ocean, and a country is responsible for providing free forecasts and issuing wind-based warnings, as well as visibility warnings anywhere over the global oceans. And you can see United States has the Northeast Pacific and the North Atlantic. This service was started after the sinking of the Titanic, because it was realized, that there are forecasts that can be provided with credible warning and lead time, but also they had the technology, this newly emerged technology called radio. And so this has been going on for several decades now, being able to provide mariners with forecast conditions using radio. That's changing, of course. And so I'm happy to talk about that as well. But that's kind of a start of our main customers in the areas that we're doing the forecast for.
Okay, let's go even basic. Let's talk about wave heights, forecasting wave heights.
Right. So waves, there's two main kind of waves that you have to deal with out over the open ocean and at the coast. One are called wind waves. And so those are produced by the wind right on top of them. And they respond very quickly to the wind. And the other kinds are called swell. And so it's waves that are produced by a storm a long way away, and they propagate or move away from the source, and they can go all the way across the equator, all the way across the ocean. And so those tend to be what's called long period. That could be 15 seconds, 20 seconds between each wave peak. All right. And they tend to be pretty smooth because they're not being wind forced anymore. So those are the two main kinds of waves. Sometimes we can have three different wave groups at the same times out in the middle of the ocean. And so the wave component can be very dangerous. In fact, I have a nice little video. I don't know if y'all have seen this one before, but to me, it really highlights the issue. Can you all see the video?
Not right now.
Can you see the video
go back
now?
to screen sharing, Chris.
Screen sharing. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was still in the screen sharing. Let me go back and do that there. All right. Help when you can see what I'm sharing there. All right. Can you see it now?
A
Yes.
bad cruise.
Okay. So this is an unnamed cruise ship, and they were going around the south end of South America into the Southern Ocean, which is notorious for big winds and waves. They were going with the waves, but then they turned the ship 90 degrees without telling anybody. And all of a sudden, the boat is starting to rock back and forth. Everybody's still walking around there. There's a customer, there's a cook, there's one of the officers, and all of a sudden it doesn't just get funny, it gets really dangerous, because the boat is swaying back and forth violently because they're
Wow.
being broadsided by these very
Ooh.
tall, steep waves, about 25-foot waves. And in 2 seconds, you're going to see a lady get a concussion, unfortunately. 3, 2, 1. Oh, yeah.
That's
And
terrifying.
so this is something you obviously have to avoid if you're a captain and crew and you've got all these folks that are dependent upon you for their safety. And this could happen any day over the open ocean if they're not taking the right precautions. And I'm not even sure what the forecast was, but in this case, it's an example of bad decision making. It was a little rough, but when the mate or a captain decided to turn the boat 90 degrees and all of a sudden get broadsided by very tall, steep, short frequency, short period waves, they should have told everybody, hey, go hang out in your cabin for a little bit here. So anyways, that's a cruise I hope you had not had been on yourself, but that's an example of where the waves can really be problematic out over the open ocean, not just the winds.
James A.
How does do you all tell me about rogue waves and how that fits into all this? Because for some reason, I think I should be a little less terrified of them than I actually am. It's kind of like the Bermuda
Right.
Triangle. I thought it was going to be a much bigger deal growing up.
Yeah. So it turns out the way we define waves and forecast them is a term using significant wave height. And the way we technically define it, it's the average of the 1/3 biggest waves. So imagine you're on a ship or a boat and you're looking out over the ocean. Your eye is naturally attuned to seeing those bigger waves. And so that's what significant wave height is trying to represent, is what a mariner looking over the open ocean is going to see and going to feel. It's the average of the 1/3 biggest waves. So it turns out the maximum wave is double that. So if they're forecasting, for example, the Weather Forecast Office, 6-foot seas, that's significant wave height, but a maximum that could be expected is double that, 12 foot. And rogue waves are those kind of maximum waves. And it's where you're getting interactions between wind waves and swell that are coming from different directions. And so when unfortunately you get superposition of those waves at the same time, you can get that maximum wave or another way to call it is a rogue wave. And unfortunately, we can't predict exactly where those are going to occur. But just keep in mind, if we're forecasting 8-foot seas, the worst you could expect would be double that, be 16.
Okay, so do most of the cruise lines have a meteorology person, or do they
No.
not?
No, they don't. There's only a couple cruise lines that do employ meteorologists, not most of them. And so they almost all have command centers where they're watching the weather. But it's been fairly recent that cruise lines have started hiring meteorologists to help them interpret and let the captains know what's going to be going on. One company that I'll name drop because they've just been so good about is Royal Caribbean. Craig Setzer, who was a TV meteorologist here in Miami, is now their lead meteorologist, and he does a phenomenal job of interacting with the captains globally that are on their cruise ships to make sure that their passengers stay safe. And it's a big, issue about, well, what do you do if a hurricane's in the Caribbean and you're supposed to go to the Cayman Islands? They are fortunate that those cruise ships are movable and they move faster than most hurricanes. And so with good forecasting, you can adjust and get to different areas and keep those passengers out of the way of the hurricane.
I can't tell you, Chris, having flown a lot of hurricanes, I've seen some very, I'll be nice, James Spann, very foolish decisions. I seen Tropical Storm Odette coming into, I don't remember what year that was, but it came into DR and Haiti, and there was a cruise boat down there, and it looked angry down there. It did not look good. And then I found out from a friend of mine who was actually on it, he says everyone threw up for 2 days. It was not good. So is that uncommon that they just go, no, we've got to go. James Adeldot wants to go to Bermuda. We're going now.
Yeah, it's less common that they get in trouble, but they still have to make wise decisions because they're trying to balance out the safety of their passengers, but also the desire of their passengers to go to the itinerary that was set for them. And so they're going to be disappointing people if they don't go where they're supposed to go. And of course, we as meteorologists can't provide perfect forecasts. In fact, all of our forecasts are always wrong. Okay. Sometimes they're wrong by a lot, but most of the time they're pretty small errors, but they're always wrong. They're always wrong when we're doing deterministic forecasts. And so you have to account for those errors. And if you're not, then you can really get yourself in trouble. And unfortunately, we've seen that where captains and mates have made bad decisions and people's lives have been lost. The most infamous occurred was 10 years ago, 11 now, with the El Faro, which was a U.S. flagged roll-on, roll-off cargo ship that would take cars every week down from Jacksonville to Puerto Rico and come back with agricultural products from Puerto Rico. And the captain of the ship took it right into the middle of a Category 4 hurricane, and all 33 people perished with him. And unfortunately, those things happen. It's pretty rare. Brian showed that wonderful display from marinetraffic.com, which shows all the vessels that have an AIS transponder that's turned on. And almost everybody has it turned on unless you're trying to funnel oil or drugs somewhere without telling anybody. But that really, you can see how the vessels are getting out of the way of the hurricane. They're seeing the forecasts and they're taking precautions to stay safe. And so that's gratifying to us as forecasters because it means they're doing the right thing for everybody on board the vessel.
Okay, so you say you're for mariners. Okay, we mentioned cruise boats. What about all the giant ships? I know there's a company, Kim, not far from you in Norman. What is it? Weather News? Weather News? Okay. Do you know them? Do they have meteorology people? Or are they relying on Weather News, or they just say we're going to Norway, period?
Yeah, so it's still a mix. A lot of bigger companies do have private weather companies that they do weather ship routing for them. And so they'll be looking at different routes they could go and advise them. Some just have their own command center, make those decisions. And the ones that have meteorologists, I think, are probably a little better off. And some are just going on and looking at windy.com or predict wind and looking at raw model output, which to me is a mistake, because if you're only looking at single model runs, which we know are always wrong, and not you looking at probabilistic information, you're setting yourself at risk there. So what we're trying to do is get to our holy grail. Our holy grail is get our wind grids, our wave grids, and our warning hazards into the electronic and charting navigation systems. So these ECDIS aboard all large vessels in the world are going to be having everything on there. They'll have the bathymetric data to see how deep the water is. They'll have the currents from the National Ocean Service. They'll have the Coast Guard regulations, and they'll have our Weather Service winds and waves and warnings on there. And so, to me, we've got 2 years to get 2 years to get there, and so we're working to make sure we stay relevant to the mariners for the next several decades to come.
Okay, I got a text. This is Nelson in Waycross, Georgia. What does TAFB on a day-to-day basis? What do they do?
Good question. So unlike the hurricane specialists and the storm surge specialists at our office at the Hurricane Center, we're busy year round because we have hazards not just during hurricane season, but winter storms like the storm of the century that Brian talked about. We also have what are called gap wind events that are big wind forcing functions, one of which is just south of Mexico called in the Gulf of Tehuantepec. It's called now this is not a bad word, it's called a Tehuantepecker. Okay. And that is a giant wind that's a downslope windstorm coming off of the Gulf of America.
It's true.
Yes, it is. And actually today we had one that was causing gale force winds. And so that's that keeps us busy. So we have two busy periods, peak of the hurricane season and winter. And the spring and the fall are a little bit quieter for us. And so we're hoping we can get into the quieter time period soon.
Okay, guys, got a question. Brian, good to see you. It's been a long time since we've had a chance to talk. Chris, nice to have you with us tonight. I'm sitting here and I've had to leave and walk away from here for a second. But my head is spinning because at least with weather forecasts, we can see what we're forecasting to some degree. It seems like everything that you're talking about here not only has to do with the meteorology, but it has to do with the continental shelf. And it's not something we see every day. And it seems like that I'm wondering why that gale warning, Brian, was out south of the what I call the reverse hump of Florida, while either side of it was a small craft advisory. And of course, certain has to do with meteorology, but at the same time, does that have to do with continental shelf as well? Those areas that you can't see? It just seems like I think I'll stick with the meteorology. Stick at least you can look up and at least and hopefully have an upper air, but it seems like this would be so darn complicated.
It is. Yeah, Troy, it's a really good point. And I'm glad you brought it up because I didn't really get into talking about technology that has really been helping meteorologists and the kind of the intersection between oceanography and meteorology. And we're seeing technology advance much greater over the past, honestly, 5 years, but I'll say 5 to 10, where there's been a lot of private sector groups. Some has a regional headquarters here in St. Petersburg. There's also something called IOOS or IOOS. It's the International Oceanographic Observing System. And for the Gulf of Mexico, it's called the GCOOS, or the Gulf Coast Ocean Observing System. They're based at Texas A&M, so not far from Detroit. And they have their connections all the way through all of the Gulf Coast. And I bring it up because they do a lot of research and partner connections with private sector, academia, and NOAA. And there's things called uncrewed systems. So these are gliders. Think of like large surfboards that are going on the surface of the water. They're also going underwater. They're measuring water temperature. They're measuring something called salinity, or how much salt is in the water. That has a big impact on the buoyancy of water. And why is that helpful? Well, think of Chris's area and what I do as well for hurricane forecasting, where if you have higher density water, it may want to sink. And that creates a circulation in the water that allows colder water from beneath come up. We call it upwelling. So all of this is still connected to meteorology. And again, I think of El Nino, La Nina, that atmosphere, oceanic intersection. But the technology has really helped. And some of the buoys that we have out there actually have cameras now. And so they've been putting cameras on some of these buoys and some of these uncrewed systems to allow us to actually see the sea state. We've actually seen some water spouts out in the open ocean. We've seen fog. And that was one thing that I also wanted to bring up, because Chris and I have worked together in briefing Coast Guard Sector St. Pete, and Chris has the big Coast Guard district in Miami. But fog is a significant hazard for marine transportation and navigation safety. And he talked about the cruise ships, and Chris did, I did. We both talked to their chief meteorologist with Royal Caribbean many times. Craig is outstanding, and he would reach out to us at the Tampa National Weather Service. And I'm glad he did, because he would let us know, okay, wait a minute, the fog, we need to have better timing for that fog, because we have to know whether or not are we going to speed up or slow down on this particular cruise ship in order to make it back into Tampa Bay. So fog forecasting at the local field office level is one of the most critical when it comes to marine navigation.
Well, one other thing too, for the users that Chris has talked about, the marine users that are out there, these ships that we see at the marinetraffic.com, are they contributing? I know we used to have the marine weather officers, or used to have the officers in some of the local offices. Are these ships contributing anything to? I mean, we got AWASs and ASOSs sitting on. They're pieces of crap in some places, but basically we got them sitting over land. Are these ships making any reports at all that get into the meteorological data stream that help us?
They are. Yeah, Chris, do you want to talk about the MAROB, the Marine Observation?
Yeah, sure. I'll show just one slide to show that as well. So there is a program globally called the Voluntary Observing Ship Program, or VOS. And so it is administered by the World Meteorological Organization. And the idea is any commercial vessel that's out there, they all have meteorology stations on board. They have an anemometer, barometer, measure the temperature and the humidity. And so getting those into our operations so we know what's going on helps us to provide a better forecast. And in the past, it would be some mate had to write it down and then radio it out. So what they've been doing is modernizing this, where we get an automated observations. And so instead of once every 6 hours, if we're lucky, now we're getting hourly reports from these vessels. And so we're still at a point where only about 10% of all those ships that Brian showed, only 10% are they sending us their observations. So there's still a lot of gaps for us that we're hoping to fill in. So because the more we know now, the better prediction we can provide.
Okay. What
Chris.
about, do you have a warning coordination meteorologist, Chris? Do you have a PR person? Do you have someone that trains how many ships right now are in the Gulf? I can't even say that. The Gulf, all right? How many are in the Gulf?
Be careful.
All right. Right now, how do you train these folks who have very, let's say, limited weather awareness? Is that nice? I think that was nice.
You reach out to them as best you can. And so we have an annual Mariners workshop where we invite in the cruise ships, we invite in the oil companies, we invite in the cargo ships, so that they know what products we're providing and how to access them. And more importantly, we ask them, well, how are you getting the weather? What are the gaps? And so we're doing our best to make sure that we're interacting on an annual basis, and so that we're staying relevant to them. Because we're in this really amazing transition where just a few years ago, everyone was using radio technology over the open ocean. And now Starlink has sent up about 1 zillion little satellites, and everybody's got Starlink because of the SpaceX satellites. And so they're all having high-speed internet, and they're looking at raw model output. And so it's this very wonderful change over the open ocean for the mariners, but we're trying to keep up with it in the National Weather Service side.
Last thing I'll give it to Kim is, do you know how in the aviation you get the ACARS data? So when those ships, the map that he showed, are you ingesting that in various models that you forecast? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we use it two ways. One is we're using it by the forecaster for situational awareness to see what's actually going on. But then the global models also, they use data assimilation to bring that measurement into the initial stage of the global forecast system and the other global models. So it's got multiple uses when the mariners are sending us their data.
Well, John, that was very much in line with the question that I was interested in too, because I know the difference that assimilating that data has made, the aviation data has made to our global models generally. So very excited to hear that that's something that you all are doing. So I'll pivot a little bit. I know you've talked a lot about some of your domain areas of expertise being, close to the CONUS or down in the Caribbean. Can you tell us, have there been any changes in recent years, increase in frequency of traffic through the polar regions? And are you familiar with how marine forecasting may be done in areas where you're looking at the transition between ice and open ocean? Maybe that's another set of centers that get involved with that. And if that's true, tell us about where that responsibility lies.
Yeah, well, I can start a little bit. We only go up to Jacksonville and San Diego, and so our forecast responsibilities have no ice in it. So that's a good thing. But the Ocean Prediction Center, they do go all the way to 67 north, and so they have in their forecast products ice edge and sea fog and this nasty thing called freezing rain, where you can get freezing spray that adheres to the ship and can actually cause them to flip over. Some really nasty conditions. And as you mentioned, the Arctic is changing. It's becoming more ice free because of global warming, and there's more interest in many nations in using that for mariners to get across. And so the U.S. doesn't have any official duties north of 67, but I do believe that the Ocean Prediction Center is wanting to provide full ocean coverage for whatever mariners that are interested in getting that information there. So yes, I would defer to the AJ Rice, the director at the Ocean Prediction Center, for more, but certainly the Weather Service wants to help mariners out wherever they're at.
And Kim, there's actually a partnership. I went to the National Ice Center many years ago up in the DC area outside of Weather Service headquarters, and it's kind of a partnership between Department of Defense and NOAA, U.S. Navy. So the National Ice Center is using polar orbiting satellites, using the GOES satellites, and they're looking for, okay, where is the ice to begin with? And Chris said a lot of it is becoming more ice free. And when I was out in Alaska, I was at the Anchorage Weather Forecast Office, the Tsunami Warning Center. They also had an aviation unit there. They cover a large marine area, but they work closely with their state partners, because a lot of things in Alaska are heavily state focused versus federal, and they're also doing a lot of ice surveys. There's a national operational hydrologic ice center. It's a mouthful of an acronym, but they're up in Minnesota, Chanhassen, and they're also doing ice research, ice operational duties, and that's mainly for spring melt, for flood potential. But again, they're also using some of the polar orbiting and GOES satellite data to see where is the ice, where is it thickest, snowpacks. There's something called the Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, called GLERL. It's part of NOAA. It's part of the OAR, the Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research, which has been in the news a lot over the past year. They do tremendous work at GLERL in the Great Lakes because of the shipping that occurs internationally between the US and Canada. So again, Alaska is like a whole another frontier, if that's not already a phrase taken, but they do tremendous amounts of aviation, ocean, and ice forecasting. And their forecast offices, you think of the state of Alaska, where what's the thing, you can fit 3 or 5 Texas. I don't know, Troy, you might remember, but either 3 or 5 Texas in the state of Alaska.
Yeah.
There's only 3 weather forecast offices that cover the state of Alaska. And that's Anchorage, Juneau, and Fairbanks. And there's some smaller Weather Service offices. I was at the Kodiak National Weather Service office back in 2003. And again, the theme today is marine and coastal weather, right? And so their main partner is the fishing community. And so I got to meet with the fishing community in Kodiak, and they relied heavily on temperature forecasting, wind speed and direction, and the wave forecasting that Chris also mentioned from the Ocean Prediction Center, because that's their livelihood. That is what they do. That is the commerce in that part of Alaska, is for fishing. And so it's tremendous. It's like everything is connected. I mean, we're all scientists on this call and a lot of us listening, but everything is connected. You talk about weather, climate, science, it gets into our food supply. We talk about fisheries. That's all of what NOAA does. And so it is fascinating to see it all coming together on this call. There was one really cool comment. I don't know if it was seen on the YouTube connection. I believe his name is Tom, possibly. He talked about if we would mention about a seiche, he said it would be sensational. And so in the spirit of the wave forecasting, a seiche is actually a wave oscillation. And I like to talk about it in terms of the Gulf of Mexico on a smaller scale, but the Great Lakes. So think of the Great Lakes, maybe Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, could be either of them. When you have, say, a fast-moving weather system, there's momentum that's moving with that weather system. The wind is pushing air. that air is touching the water. That momentum transfer will now push the water into what Chris described as, waves, rogue waves, significant wave heights. But in a closed body of water like the Great Lakes, it's like a bathtub. It's like a perfect experiment where you'll have the water sloshing back and forth. And you could get significant waves on the east portion of the lake versus the west, but then you'll actually see the fluctuation in the waves in the buoys. And it's fascinating. And we'll see that sometimes in the Gulf of Mexico when we have strong cold fronts, almost like the one of the March Superstorm 93. If you look at the tidal gauge, you'll see these spikes, and we call them meteo tsunamis. So think of a tsunami like an earthquake. It elevates or changes the seafloor and forces a wave to go outward. Well, a meteo tsunami is like an atmospheric pressure change, or a perturbation as we call it. So that fast moving squall line, the pressure changes significantly on either side of it. The wind is pushing the water. You'll actually get a mini tsunami, or a meteorological tsunami. And we've seen many of them on the west coast of Florida. There's many research studies. So if you're listening, Google meteo tsunami and Clearwater Beach, and you'll see some fascinating pictures.
Cool. All right, Brian, Coast Guard and the Weather Service, are they sort of connected, really connected, or they must be connected? What's the future, the current and the future in Ken Graham's model? Where about the Weather Service and the Coast Guard?
Yeah, it's a significant connection, and that's what I was doing for 8 months before I retired. Last April was helping the Weather Service go through this modernization that Chris is now leading with.
Oops. Uh-oh.
He talked about
Just
the
like
modernization.
Cameron Nixon.
It's those control people. What is that? Master control.
Master control.
Yeah.
No,
Master
we can't talk
control.
about that.
Cameron
The
Nixon's at
cold
fault
front.
here.
The cold front just went through Tampa. That's what it was.
Yeah.
This cold front. He froze.
Sucked his
Ooh.
bandwidth away. Ooh.
All right. Well, maybe I can
There's the
take
snow
over
panic.
for him then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, it sounded like he was giving a lead into you. He said your name. And so we'll just say now Chris.
All right. Well, glad to jump in there. Hopefully Brian can come back. So we in the Weather Service have a unique relationship with the Coast Guard. So unlike the U.S. Air Force or the U.S. Navy or even the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard has exactly 0 forecasters. They have no meteorologists. Do you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And so by agreement, every 10 years, the head of the Weather Service signs an agreement with a big shot Rear Admiral in the Coast Guard saying they're going to help us out with the radio facts and some of the NOAA weather radio in Alaska. And we provide them briefing support and specialized spot forecasts. And so when we're working with the Coast Guard here at the National Hurricane Center, we're doing it at the district level. And so one of the things they need at their command centers is spot weather forecasts for big events over the open ocean. So this could be like an oil spill, if you recall Deepwater Horizon, which is quite a few years ago now. It could be for an airplane that's ditched. It could be for a ship that is lost. It could be for a man overboard. And in fact, do you know that when they say the phrase man overboard, that it's actually 90% of the time, it's actually a dude overboard? Did you know that? So why do you think when it's a man overboard, it's 85 to 90% of the time, it actually is a guy? Why do you think that's the case?
James Edeldahl, it's your answer.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. You know he's got a
Men
good
are knuckleheads.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. And there's the other flippant answer that guys on cruise ships get drunk and fall overboard. But the reality is that mariners today, it's still 90% of mariners, like on cargo ships, oil platforms in the Gulf, it's dominated by men, and it's a very dangerous profession. Yep. And so, but it is true, 85 to 90% of the time when you say man overboard, it's a dude. So we're helping the Coast Guard with these specialized forecasts when they have to deploy either aircraft or ships to go deal with this. And this does include law enforcement, where they're chasing the bad guys. We don't ask why. We just say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Here's the forecast. And hope you can stay safe. We ramp up our assistance and what's called impact-based decision support services during the hurricane season. So again, at the district level, we provide big picture briefings for any tropical storm or hurricane to hit the United States, or any hurricane in their search and rescue regions, those little boxes out over the water. And so because the Coast Guard has to make some big decisions, they have to figure out on the ports, there's a captain of the port where he or she has to decide which ports to close and when. And you don't want them closing them too early because it's a massive disruption on U.S. commerce. But you don't want to close it too late because the hurricane may be impacting. You're going to destroy some of the harbors there. They also have to make the decisions about their own offices, whether to continue business as usual or to evacuate, because most of the Coast Guard offices are on the coast. And then finally, they got to get their planes and their ships out of harm's way because of the hurricane coming itself, but not too far away. Why? Because they're also first responders.
Yep.
And just 4 years ago, just the Coast Guard rescued 1,007 men, women, and children in and around Fort Myers after Hurricane Ian. Okay, think about that. That's just the Coast Guard. That's not even the local law enforcement. All right. And so it's an amazing job that these men and women do every day in the U.S. Coast Guard to help us out. And so it's a privilege of mine to be able to work with our U.S. Coast Guard to help keep people safe. So anyways, that's my salute to them, and again, privileged to work with such wonderful people.
Let's see, Brian. Brian, are you back with us? I think Brian is back on the planet.
He said
here.
his internet went out.
It is. It may have been weather related. Who knows? But here we are. It's working.
Okay. Well, I just want to be sure that you were back. Welcome back. So, real quick, fella, we have a time constraint here, but I want to ask a question about special marine warnings. I'm a tornado guy, severe thunderstorm guy, and we have two key metrics. Number one is POD, probability of detection. Number two, FAR, false alarm ratio. So my question is, are any metrics, is there any data on POD and FAR with special marine warnings about how many of these things verify? How many are false alarms? Do we know?
That statistic is actually one that's not readily calculated, like the tornado, POD and false alarm. The special marine warning, like you said, unless we get a verification from, say, a mariner that, on a vessel, or if it happens to hit a buoy or one of the other stations that may be out there, observational platforms, and we simply don't know. There are plans in the future for the Weather Service to change verification program and actually start using say Doppler radar, if it's closer to the area. And I know there's talk of that even with the EF scale and using Doppler wind velocities for, measuring the intensity in the future. I think we're going to see some of that in the marine area as well. There's also some of the high frequency radar that can give us some data that's, near the coastline. That can be another area. But right now, the special marine warnings don't have formal verification. It's only the interior warnings.
And let's say I'm on a charter fishing vessel, I don't know, 10 miles offshore, and I get a special marine warning. The captain gets a special marine warning. What are you asking him to do exactly? Because I'm just curious about the call to action. We know what we are trying to tell people to do when there's a tornado approaching. You get a special marine warning, what do you do?
Yeah, typically it's going to be similar to what we say with tornadoes, like for the tornado, interior room, closet, bathroom, lowest floor in your home or business. With the special marine warning, it's going to be a very small area, just like a tornado warning. So for that cruise ships to be near that or a vessel to be near that is going to be extremely rare. But if they are and they get that on the Marine Channel for the Coast Guard, marine radio, then the same thing, they're going to get into the lowest portion of that boat. They're going to go into the lowest level. They're not going to be out on the deck, and they're going to be able to possibly bring in the sail if it's, if it has one. And that way they're able to withstand some of the wave action and the wind action.
And again, you talked about the communication has changed with these vessels. Are they still using RF radio transmission at all, or is it all Starlink stuff?
I think it's a mixture of both. Yeah, I think, and Chris can
Okay.
talk about it too. It definitely is going to be a blend. It depends on, the mariner and what they can afford, what they have on their vessel, what they have on their boat. There's a lot of commercial and recreational boaters out there, but a lot of the recreational boaters, some may not have the full suite of electronics and technology, but they would typically, if they're recreational, are going to be staying relatively close to the coastline, and they're going to be able to have some of the either the marine NOAA weather radio, which only goes out maybe like 15, 25 miles, but they'll also have some of the Coast Guard VHF channels as well. And Chris, you were talking earlier about the other technology for Starlink satellite, but not every vessel has that, correct?
Yeah. Yep. It's changing fast. In fact, I wanted to show you what we issued today. We've been doing experimental graphical marine wind warnings. And so this is based on our grids of our sustained winds. And this shows for today's cold front over the Gulf. Everywhere in that light purple is the gale force winds, at least 34 knots or 40 miles per hour. And down at the very bottom, we actually did a storm warning near Tampico and Veracruz. And so this is brand new as of just a couple months ago. When we provide this anywhere in our areas of responsibility out to 35 west longitude. And so this is going to be a day 1 warning and a day 2 warning for mariners to do this. It does seem like the age of radio for ships out over the open ocean is ending very quickly because the cost of high-speed internet is getting really cheap and it's getting very reliable. And so we're starting to discontinue some of the radio-based transmissions, whether we've stopped doing radio fax. We stopped doing VOBRA, which is a long-range voice broadcast, and we're starting to trim back on our radio fax, which is graphics, and we still have nav text, which is text by radio as well. But my guess is we're going to be moving to this all digital, so the mariner could be able to pull this right up on their navigation software and help to make better decisions to stay safe when there's big winds and waves coming.
It's outstanding. And one quick question. Do you support the United States military with operations in any other ocean basin?
So we do the East Pacific as well, out to 140 west longitude. So it's the Atlantic, the Caribbean, the Gulf. You can call it Gulf of America. You can call it Gulf of Mexico. I'm required to call it Gulf of America, and in the East Pacific. So there are Weather Service offices out in the South Pacific and the West Pacific as well. So, but the big official area of responsibility goes from essentially the dateline to 35 west longitude. So about half of the world north of the equator.
For all we know, some folks down in Guam, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We do. Hey, Chris and Brian, one thing we haven't asked you about because it's not really tied to what we're talking, but it would seem being on a vessel over the ocean, the lightning would just be a huge, huge issue. That it's very much a danger. I assume it is a huge issue if you're on a vessel like that. I assume they take precautions. Lightning is probably not going to take the ship under. But at the same time, it seems like it could be very deadly for people on board and especially on deck.
It can be. Obviously, you don't want to be on deck and near all mast, with that lightning storm. However, much like think about it on land, like all our lightning safety precautions, where you have a pickup where you don't want to be in the bed of the pickup during a lightning storm, but you're safe inside, just like you're safe inside an airplane. But with a boat, unless you're on a canoe, then you're kind of a sitting duck and very vulnerable in that area. But you can get underneath and you're going to be safe, especially with the fiberglass around some boats and also some of the steel around others.
But essentially, anyone on the deck, on the cruise ships, I assume if they're approaching lightning, they're going to get that information probably, and they'll clear the deck, right? I've never been on a cruise before, so I don't know. I just asking.
The three that I've been on, they're even with like rainstorms that we were approaching, and they did not allow any people on deck. So they try to take that, but some people will take matters into their own hands and risk it.
Imagine that. James, I'm sorry. Let you wrap it up.
There's boneheads everywhere. And on that note, we have to pause, and we're going to hear from Tony Rice and his astronomy report. We're going to come back and do some email with John. And again, Brian and Chris, will warn you, we're going to need a pick of the week here. Brian should know this. He's an old pro here. But Chris, we're going to need something that is interesting, related to weather, that might be a website, a data source, hardware, software. So after we do the email segment, we're going to do picks of the week. But before any of that, we're going to hear from Tony Rice as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
100 years ago today, Dr. Robert Goddard launched a small rocket from a snowy cabbage patch in Auburn, Massachusetts. It flew for just 2.5 seconds, reaching a height of about 40 feet and landed less than 200 feet away. But it marked the first successful launch of a liquid-fueled rocket. Unlike earlier rockets that had been around for centuries and burned solid gunpowder-based fuels, this design used separate tanks of fuel and oxidizer that mixed inside the engine. This allowed for much greater control and efficiency, and it became the foundation of modern rocketry. Every launch vehicle we use today, from sounding rockets to the vehicles that carried, and will do so again in a couple of weeks, astronauts to the moon, they can trace their lineage back to that brief flight a century ago. Today, that launch site is a National Historic Landmark, marked by a plaque and a small granite obelisk near the 9th fairway of the Pacacho Golf Course. Elsewhere in the sky, the March equinox is coming up on Friday, the moment when the Earth's axis is tilted neither toward or away from the sun. Now, in theory, the equinox should mean equal day and night everywhere on Earth. But if you look at a sunrise-sunset table, particularly the hours of sunlight, you'll notice that the equilux, or the day where daylight and nighttime are closest to equal, actually happens a couple of days before the equinox. That difference comes from two things. Earth's atmosphere bends sunlight up slightly, allowing us to see the sun even when it's a little bit below the horizon. And second, sunrise and sunset are defined by the top edge of the sun touching the horizon, not the center of the disk. Take those two things together, and you get a couple of extra minutes of daylight each day. Because of that added light, the day of the equilux arrives a few days before the geometric alignment on the equinox. Now, if you're standing on the equator, the equilux and equinox are pretty much the same. That's because the sun rises nearly vertically, but the further you get away from the equator, the earlier the equilux is. Here in the mid-Atlantic and parts of the South, it's today, Monday. Or put another way, in the words of poet Jimmy Buffett, changes in latitude, changes in how diagonal the sun's path is through the sky, or something like that. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
Okey-doke. I just have a funny feeling we might have a few emails to read this week.
Okay, so we got some show titles, suggestions. I really want to thank Tom Scott, who's Troy. They want you to do a Texas flood anniversary. So there, a bunch of people came in, Troy. So we're going to do that. When, do you remember the date we picked?
I think we picked around the 4th of July, the 1-year anniversary. So
Preston gave us a suggestion for one of the weather groups. And I want to, these questions are going to go to you, Chris Lancy. So here we go. This is from our friend James Lewis. We've seen how numerical weather predictions have made strides in forecasting like hurricanes, winter storms, severe weather. How have NWP improvements affected forecasting for parameters like significant wave heights? Do you think anything is improved? What's it going to be like in 10 and 20 years?
Yeah, good question. So we have seen improvements in wave forecasting. One thing that still is lacking is that the global forecast system wave model sometimes is off by even a couple feet at the initial time with these large swell. And it's problematic for them because the wave model doesn't do any what's called data assimilation. So it doesn't know how big the waves are initially. And so that's a lack that they're trying to address at the Environmental Modeling Center. And so right now we do use a mix of the GFS wave and the EC wave. EC wave does tend to do a better job with these long period swell that are going all the way across the oceans. I suspect that like most weather forecasting, we're going to continue to see improvements in the ocean wave predictions as well, because when you get better forecasts of the trade winds, and the jet stream and the hurricanes, that feeds back and providing better forecasts for the waves as well. So we're never going to get to perfect. And like I said earlier, forecasts are always wrong, but they're going to get less wrong as we get into the future. So, and hey,
Okay.
James Lewis, good to hear from you.
He's got one more for you, Chris. He says, regarding the Hurricane Reanalysis Project, what the heck is the fastest mile wind speed? It shows up all the time in older material. Do you people still use it?
Yeah, that's an old timey metric there. So now our metric is a 1 minute sustained wind. But back in the older anemometers, they couldn't measure that directly, but they could figure out how fast, how much time it took for a mile to occur. So if it was, a 60-mile-per-hour wind, that would occur in 1 minute. If it was a 30-mile-per-hour wind, it would occur in 2 minutes. And so the fastest mile is that's what that's referring to. But yeah, we don't use that anymore. But if you look at the old monthly weather reviews 50, 75 years ago, that's what the metric was.
Yeah, and the last thing, James, was you got some love for your all-night work from Eric Harrison. He's got some funnies, which reminds me, Aeldot must have wrote this. He said, here are the highlights. Here are the highlights of watching the Alabama Weather Network from Mr. Span. He did an awesome job. Here are some of my favorite moments. 1, Coca-Cola sponsoring the coverage. Well played, Mr. Mr. Span. 2, the best question of the night. Is that a duck?
Yeah.
There's another one I won't read, but apparently you had a lot of fans protecting the Alabamans all night long. Can you put up on the screen, Eagle, the next few episodes? Do you mind?
Yes. Let's see here. Now let's see if I can make this thing work here. So here we go. Here we go. Mine should be easier. All right, I've got it. Boom. There we go.
Okay, so next week's folks, if you have questions for someone Chris knows very well, the NHC director, Dr. Michael Brennan, Kim and Rick and James Edeldat will be leading the following week on a legend. Howie Bluestein is going to come to WeatherBrains for the first time, I believe.
Wow.
And April 6th, our good friend Brian Lamar. And the last name Kim thinks is funny, Brian, if you haven't been following this whole thing about French and the word Okay. So, and Mike Clay. You want to tell us Mike Clay real quick? He is on the Spectrum. Is that right?
That's right. So he's chief meteorologist at Spectrum Day News 9 here in Tampa. A great friend, and it'll be a great session.
Yeah, so we're going to try to do about every 2 to 3 months a new market and get 2 or 3 Mets on from that market and just go across the country. And James Edeldat got Dallas-Fort Worth in June, maybe? I forget. Whenever it is. So if you have a question, comment, show title, whatever, email your stuff to weatherbrains.com, email at weatherbrains.com. We'd love to hear your suggestions. And back to you, Eagle.
All right, good deal. So let's morph into picks of the week. This is where we're going to share something that is weather related. And I'll say up front, my pick, it's some video from one of our chasers in the field, Brett Adair, who was on one of the tornadoes that came through the Tennessee Valley last night. And this, so far, the rating looks like it's going to wind up being an EF1. But these guys just do great work, especially with what we do here. So many of our events are in the middle of the night. And QLCS, rain wrap, you know the deal. And for these guys, these men and women to go out there and do this amazing work, it's just great. I've got the easiest job in the world. I'm in a safe, dry studio standing in front of a green wall. They're out there in it. But anyway, Brett got some video of that EF1 that came through Lauderdale County, Alabama, and Giles County, Tennessee last night. So, all right, so let's go to James Adelot. We'll get him in first because he's got the 9 o'clock news on Fox 23. James, what's your pick?
Well, I was tempted to use the savagery of Rick Smith and National Weather Service chat, but I'm sure that would violate all kinds of terms of service. So I was his victim of that. But I'm going to do a picture of the really long line of thunderstorms from Chicago almost all the way to Houston. So the little thing on the weather front said 800 miles or so. It was March in the plains or March in the country again.
Yeah, that thing stretched all the way from goodness, what, Houston to Indianapolis at one point before it got in here. But that was quite a deal. Okay, thank you, sir. Let's go to Troy Kimmel, deep in the heart of Texas, for a pick of the week.
Yeah, watching the severe weather up. Well, that storm, James, actually ended up southeast of Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, right?
Right.
And caused quite a bit of damage. And a little earlier in the evening, I'm not sure it was one of the closely associated storms. Also had the storms over in near Corinth, Mississippi, near Kossuth, that ended up being EF1 as well. That according to the WFO up in Memphis. But the reason I bring it up is my pick of the week. And maybe James Spann, you know more about this, but this new website called hascams.com that is out there. And I really watched. There's actually a live camera in Ryan's, Mississippi now, some of the smaller places in Northeast Mississippi and Southern Tennessee. And it was really amazing watching this severe weather last night on this. So I noticed that Tennessee Valley Weather is associated, I think, themselves with this group, North Mississippi Storm Chasers, James. But this is really kind of a cool website and an increasing number of cameras I'm seeing.
Yeah, we have a heavy relationship with that entity, and that is Brett Adair in his group. Okay. That's and so their equipment is really good and it's really reliable.
Yep.
And we have about maybe 60 of their cameras out, and it's available on that site. In the Tennessee Valley Weather Group, and it's a win-win-win for everybody. And we just know that people want to see, they want to seek confirmation. So instead of having to walk out the front yard like most men do, these boneheads, you can go to this website and see every camera live in real time with weather data. On your phone or a tablet or your TV or whatever. So that's a great pick, and it's a great resource. Okay, Kim, you are up. What's your pick of the week?
All right, my pick of the week is breaking news from UCAR. I don't know if we want to go through all the rigmarole of playing the breaking news jingle or not, but I think a lot of our community will be interested in this. There is a lawsuit that UCAR just filed today against several federal agencies, including NOAA, NSF, OMB, and the Department of Commerce. And UCAR is the organization that manages NCAR, the National Center for Atmospheric Research, which, if you've been following news in our field, there's been a lot of talk about dismantling this organization. At the same time, UCAR also had a number of other kinds of cooperative agreements, grants, things that NOAA has canceled in recent months. And so the lawsuit is about that. But I'm not going to offer any commentary on this because I am a UCAR employee supporting NOAA, and I'm doing a detail right now under one of the named defendants. So I'm just here to bring you all information.
And that is good information. And yeah, I have been involved in some litigation stuff over the years, and goodness, I've been told so many times by my attorney, keep your mouth shut. So we can appreciate that, Kim. But then again, that's fascinating to see how this whole thing is going to play out. All right, John Gordon, let's go to you, Air John, for a pick of the week.
Yes, sir. Did you know that Marquette had 14 and a half hours where the visibility never went above a half a mile?
Wow.
Woo.
They're going to have 36 inches near Marquette. They're going to break their all-time snowfall record in Marquette. Weather weenies out there, think about that. Marquette, Michigan's going to break the all-time mother record. Pretty well. So before I give you the pick, I just want to tell you, Neil Jacobs and Ken Graham, please listen.
And you know they are. They are.
I have 5 MIC friends, and none of us can find snowfall totals. Please make snowfall totals easier for us, for the media, for James Adeldot, for AccuWeather, for the TV Mets, for everyone. We cannot find snow totals.
Now we know, but John, we know, I mean, this is a ship that sailed in a sense. In the state of Alaska, I don't even want to go into it.
Yeah, we need snow totals.
Yeah.
Don't make us go to 1,500 clicks to find them.
No.
Please, Neil, give us good snow totals. My pick of the week is windy.com. I forecast for the Canadians, forecast in alpine temperatures on ski slopes. It's very challenging. Windy.com makes my life so much easier. I'm loving it. It's making Whistler and Sunshine Village better forecasts. Thank you, windy.com.
All right. So, Brian, you've had plenty of time to think about it. Give us a pick of the week. I know it's going to be good.
All right, it will be, and I'm actually going to show it. So for any listeners, the pick of the week is this satellite image. If you don't know what the word haboob is, Haboob, it's actually an Arabic term for dust storm. And I used to work out at the National Weather Service in Lubbock. Had many of them. They can be deadly, but this satellite image is extremely impressive as that plume of dust is pushing off to the south.
Yeah. You got to love a good haboob. Isn't that right, Troy?
I'm going to let that one pass.
All right. All right, Chris. So before we get your pick of the week, how you getting along with Dr. Jacobs? Y'all getting along okay?
He did visit a couple months ago, and we certainly are getting good support from NOAA and Department of Commerce in the Weather Service. We're actually hiring again and starting to flesh out our staff as this reorg gets underway. So it's kind of exciting times. And I think Ken Graham is doing an excellent job of moving us ahead and modernizing us and really helping to allow us to work more with our partners with impact-based decision support services. So big changes underway, certainly.
Good. All right. Well, give us a pick of the week. Give us something good.
All right. Well, I showed it already, but I'll tell you what the website was. So this experimental graphical marine wind warning, very first time we can show over the open oceans where our warnings are. And it's the same warning, whether it's wintertime with gale or storm, or during the hurricane season with tropical storm or hurricane warnings. And so it's hurricanes.gov/GIS/marine/warnings. And so this is experimental. We sent out a public notification about it. We're going to run it for another year or so and see how it works. But it's the very first time mariners over the open ocean can actually see a cumulative warning for the next 2 days. So we're excited to really make people aware of this. If you're going on a cruise ship, you want to make sure your captain's taking a look at this.
Bookmark it. Everybody bookmark it. That's outstanding. So anything else we need to promote, fellas, before we wrap it up here? We got to pull the plug on the show. This was a great show. Any social media accounts, anything we need to plug? This is your chance. Plug away.
I think I can bring in two, James. There are two weather apps that are pretty popular out there that have connections to some employees in the weather business. One is, it may have been talked about before, but Everything Weather, and also Weatherfront, which I think you already mentioned. But those two have been gaining more and more popularity and are excellent for anyone looking for weather data.
Excellent. We'll put links to everything, all the picks of the week, and with the things we talked about here on the show notes on WeatherBrains.com. But if you are new here, we are on the air typically every Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. And we do stream it live. You can watch us live on YouTube, youtube.com/WeatherBrains, or of course watch it later. But we know that most of you listen to the audio version of this. So whether you watch, listen, thank you. And if you want to get in touch with us, send us an email. We love to get email. The email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. Maybe a show topic suggestion, a guest suggestion, just a general question about weather. Send it on, email@weatherbrains.com. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend. God bless.
Great
show.
Thank
Great
you.
show.
Thanks, Chris, Brian.
Awesome.
Brian
Thanks for
and
your
Chris,
time.
thank you. Thanks, guys.
We know you guys are busy. Thank you.